What is up, beautiful people of the internet? I go by the name of Wesley, and today we are reacting to TierZoo's The Fish Tier List. I love TierZoo, one of my absolute favorite creators on all of the interwebs, and we just did a nautical themed video last time we did the deep sea meta, but this is the big kahuna. This is the big one, or I guess the big tuna. This is the big tuna, because this is the full fish tier list. I am so excited. I feel like this is so broad. This is the longest video from TierZoo that I've seen before, so it makes sense because there are so many damn fish. I'm incredibly excited. I'm excited to learn something. I don't know much about fish. I know one fish factoid, which is that goldfish get bigger after you flush them, and they grow like infinitely. The longer they live, the bigger they get. And so people think goldfish are like this big. Nah, dude, goldfish can be like this big, and that's my one fish factoid. You're welcome. That being said, subscribe down below for more reactions. And please, comment down below other TierZoo videos you want to see me react to, or just any other videos you want to see me react to in general. That being said, let's get it. I love TierZoo's animations. It made me so happy. It made me nostalgic for simpler times. I didn't get it.
This video was made in partnership with Curiosity Stream.
I didn't get it.
Fish are one of the most diverse factions in the entire game. They are extremely popular among both casual and competitive players, and make up the vast majority of the aquatic player base.
They're also beautiful.
And with so many different potential fish builds to choose from, it can be difficult to know which builds are actually competitively viable in the current meta. So today, we're going to go through the tier list of fish. This will by no means be a comprehensive tier list. I mean, there are more than 3,000 variants of the catfish build alone.
There's 3,000 different catfish. It's closer to 3,100. When this was highlighted, I thought this was fish. 3,000 fish. This gives you a picture of my ignorance when it comes to this specific non-terrestrial life form. Does terrestrial mean land? There you go. More testament to my ignorance in that sentence right there, because I don't know if that was even a sentence that made sense. That being said, there's a 3,000 catfish? That's nuts. Guys, did you know that there's some catfish in India that eat people? That's another fish factoid. I'm just throwing these zingers out here. You don't know if you can trust me, though, because I use terrestrial pretty incorrectly, I'm pretty sure. Whatever, let's keep going.
Still, by highlighting the standout builds in both high
I'm so
and low
excited,
tiers,
I'm sorry.
Hopefully I can give you a good understanding of where the fish faction fits into the current meta. And if there's a fish I didn't include, hopefully by seeing my logic in this video, you'll be able to evaluate that fish build yourself. Oh, also, quick disclaimer, since I've already made a shark tier list, I'm omitting sharks from this video. But before we dive into the tier list, first I want to give you an overview of the abilities commonly found in the fish faction, as well as some background on the history of the fish.
Are they cuddling or fighting? It's like that Mr. and Mrs. Smith. That was like that the aquatic version of the Mr. and Mrs. Smith fight scene in the kitchen where they actually end up,
Before we dive into the tier list, first I want to give you an overview
they look like they're fighting, but then they're just nuzzling.
As well as some background
What's going on here
of the fish build.
My camp counselor, I got in trouble for canoodling like that at summer camp. So I'm just saying, were they fighting or were they the other F wording?
Fish build doesn't have much in terms of unique perks or abilities, which is actually great as it means that each player has a lot of room for customization. The basic fish build is most famous for its use of the fin and gill abilities, both of which offer huge advantages in water while predictably being entirely useless on land. Back during the Devonian expansion, long before the vertebrate faction had unlocked terrestrial builds, fish were the top tier build in the game,
I did use it right.
Having a crushing matchup against the top arthropods, their main competitors. In today's meta though, fish have to compete with a lot more than just arthropods, and typically place below the top marine builds like cetaceans and cephalopods. And with the nerfs to the placoderm armor ability that fish used to have access to, fish have had to get creative with their game strategies in order to survive the current meta. Now let's get into the tier list to see which strategies and abilities are worth stepping into if you're a fish player. Seahorses are an extremely strange build with the lowest mobility stat of any fish in the game. This mobility stat is due entirely to their strange choice to spec into the prehensile tail ability at the cost of all but one of their fins. Now don't get me wrong, the prehensile tail ability can be extremely useful, especially for arboreal builds that use them to tether themselves to trees while keeping their hands and legs free for foraging. For a marine build though, I think there are better choices available. all the prehensile tail does is allow the seahorse to anchor itself to plants and rocks, preventing itself from getting tossed around by the current, which again it wouldn't need to do if it didn't lack fins.
I didn't even realize a seahorse was an actual fish. They're shaped so differently. I don't know what type of animal I thought they were, but I thought they were in a completely different category. Man, no wonder they're F tier.
Now, they do have pretty solid armor, which can make them difficult to actually take out.
Really?
But their extreme lack of mobility means the seahorse cannot dodge attacks.
How do they move through the
This leads
water?
them to getting smacked around by any player who feels like it, even ones without any special combat perks. And with their best matchup being against plankton, to me there's no way the seahorse places any higher than
just kind of, they look like they just scooch through the ocean. I don't see any discernible, like flapping or kicking or movement that propels them. The seahorse literally just seems like it moves, like players floating in Minecraft.
Also in F tier, we have the ocean sunfish. This probably isn't too shocking, given that the sunfish is famously bad at defending itself. But for those unaware, the ocean sunfish has the highest HP stat of any fish in the game, and relies on its giant size for protection. Similar to the seahorse, the sunfish's other stats are all extremely low, and because of this, the sunfish gets bullied hard by many of the common marine threats, both large and small. They get torn to bits and tossed around particularly badly by the mammalian player base. Sea lions and orcas in particular love flexing their superiority over the largest fish.
They look like they're just playing with it.
But the sunfish has another huge weakness: parasites.
Ew.
See, the sunfish has soft, mucus-coated skin instead of the scales traditionally used by fish players. This makes the sunfish more vulnerable to parasites, which unfortunately means that even the best sunfish mains have to play while suffering from a wide variety of debuffs from parasite infestations. The sunfish players often solicit the help of support mains like the wrasse and shrimp to help cleanse themselves, and may even sit at the water's surface to give bird mains the chance to attack the parasites. The gigantism strategy is usually a pretty reliable strategy for avoiding attacks. Elephants, whales, hippos, and rhinos are generally safe from attacks once they reach their max size. However, I think in order to make the strategy work, you need to actually be able to strike back to discourage repeated attacks. Otherwise, you're kinda just a damage sponge and will have your HP slowly whittled down, as we often see happen to the sunfish mains.
Crap.
So because of all these...
That's brutal. That seal was literally just going like, rip a little piece of you, rip a little piece of you. Being a sunfish sounds like hell. You just have a ton of HP. You have all these parasites eating away at you constantly. You have no way to actually defend yourself. You're left to just go appeal to, like, please eat these parasites off me, random other animals, please. You have no control over your own life. You can't defend yourself. That sounds like this would be the worst build to play, probably in the whole game. This is terrible. There's no upside. What do you even do? Like, what's your game? You just walk around? That sounds terrible.
Vulnerabilities and over-reliance on support players for help, I have to place the ocean sunfish in F tier.
If there was another tier that should be in that tier, be in G tier.
The flying fish is a build with an extremely unique playstyle centered around maximizing mobility.
They're really cool
by putting a huge amount of evolution points into their fin trait and mobility stat. They've actually gained the ability to glide through the air for surprisingly long distances. This is useful as an escape option when being attacked by a larger fish player. However, as unique a move as this is, I actually think this is a pretty poor strategy overall.
It's
Being
cool
airborne
though.
Might put you out of range of an attack from another fish, but it's by no means a safe position, and
Bird?
in many cases is actually seriously disadvantageous. Without any way to dodge attacks midair, flying fish are extremely vulnerable to bird attacks, which kinda nullifies the benefit of escaping an aquatic pursuer. And in addition, with no way to change direction midair, it's actually not that difficult for said fish player to just intercept the flying fish's landing. So overall, not that useful of an ability, tacked onto an otherwise unremarkable build.
It's cool though. When it works, it works.
Also,
shout out my Captain Falcon players. When your move works, it's really cool.
In D tier, we have the Salmon family, which includes the fish builds
but they
like
taste
the
so
trout and
good.
the char. This build actually has some pretty impressive stats, with high mobility being pretty much required in order to withstand the constant rushing flow of the rivers that they use as their respawn points. Similar to the flying fish, this playstyle is also highly vulnerable to disruption from non-aquatic
Yeah, they
players.
get griefed like crazy.
As impressive as it is that salmon and trout mains are able to make these insane jumps, the sad truth is that the thing that they're most well known for is being an easy source of XP for carnivore players. Now, this jumping ability is also useful for attacking flying builds midair, but the salmon's power stat isn't quite enough to be able to take down anything that isn't far below their weight class. At the
Catfish is this low?
The Catfish.
Really?
One of the tankier builds on this list with a bulky yet versatile stat spread. A lot of players undervalue the Catfish and see it as low-tier trash due to it being a bottom feeder, not realizing that they've actually got a few decent unique abilities, most important of which is their venom. Rather than speccing their fin appendages to do things like flying or flexing, the Catfish build spec'd into fins that have barbs on them, which can deliver a venomous sting.
I didn't know
While
that.
the venom usually isn't able to deal lethal damage, it's still a decent defensive ability. It does have its weaknesses though, particularly to long, disjointed hitboxes, such as the spear-like beaks of some bird builds. Nonetheless, the Catfish is still a reliable and easy-to-play build, being omnivorous and able to gain plenty of XP simply by digging through the mud for scraps.
How you said it was mistakenly put in the trash tier, but you put it pretty damn low tier, didn't you?
Also in C tier we have the Archerfish. The
Oh,
only
this is
fish
so
build
cool.
with the ability to use
Yoink.
ranged attack.
Hadouken!
This projectile deals essentially 0 damage, but it's by no means useless. This projectile has high knockback.
This would be
making it
fun.
excellent for pushing players into vulnerable positions. A waterlogged insect is one of the easiest targets in the game, and being able to force that type of interaction is an extremely powerful ability.
This would be really cool.
This ability does have its limitations though. As is the case with most projectiles, this attack is unusable in the water, meaning that the Archerfish doesn't really have any good moves for PvP against other aquatic players. I think the biggest weakness of this playstyle though is the position that you're forced into in order to make use of your projectile weapon. Being near the surface of the water leaves you vulnerable to both attacks from below and above, and with no defense against either, the Archerfish is a high-risk, decent reward build.
But it'd be really fun though.
In D tier, we have the builds that are generally solid picks, but lack any truly overpowered abilities. First is the Bass, the poster child for the phrase, big fish in a small pond. With solid stats and the ability to grow larger than most other freshwater lake fish, the bass can easily dominate their local scene, even to the point of depleting the area of resources by gobbling them all up. Their generalist nature and large jaws mean they can prey upon just about anything from smaller fish to crustaceans to even builds like frogs and alligators.
Really?
While there's not
Alligators?
much that's flashy or unique about this strategy, there's no denying that the bass is a consistent threat in the pond meta, and I consider them the gatekeepers of the higher tiers. Also in B tier, we have the fish faction's premier support class, the Cleaner Ross. The Cleaner Ross specializes in cleansing larger fish players of parasites, providing an extremely useful service in the form of removing debuffs from any fish player in need, similar to the Oxpecker on land. Parasites are a major threat to fish players, so it's no surprise that oftentimes even top-tier builds like Sharks will add Cleaner Ross players to their party. Ross do have to rely on their reputation to protect them though, and while betrayals during cleansing sessions are rare, swimming into a mouthful of dagger-like teeth is not without risk.
It came back. That one took a little wipe at him, but the cleaner fish came back. Like, oh, that was probably a mistake. Let me just go back into the jaws of death.
Alright, now we're in A tier, and this is where things start to get a bit overpowered. First, we have the Pickerel Guild, which includes the pike and muskellunge, the most fearsome freshwater fish in the game. These vicious fish builds are highly aggressive and attack anything in or around their domain, from fish to birds to mammals and even humans. Their powerful jaws sport sharp crocodile-esque teeth,
They're just
which
mean
deal
looking
serious
too.
damage and grip their target, preventing their escape. But it's not just about power with these fish. Their slender body and camouflage allow them to easily hide in cover, waiting for the perfect ambush opportunity. And unlike...
To me, they kind of feel and move a little bit like... Oh, funnily enough, cats are on screen. They kind of are like aquatic tigers the way they move a little, and they kind of like...
Trout. When these fish jump, it's not just to clear
an obstacle.
Kitty,
no kitty, no kitty.
Their only weakness is a slow growth rate and long respawn timer. But even at low levels, these fish are adept hunters. While not part of the Pickerel Guild, I also include the Barracuda in this same rating, as they have a very similar playstyle. Giant size is
They're
not
scary.
a requirement to be a high-tier predator, though, as exemplified
kill
by the
boxes.
next build on this list, the Piranha.
These are scary as crap,
Piranhas
too,
are
man.
one of the best, if not the best, example of how with the right combination of special abilities and team strategies, size genuinely doesn't matter.
You wouldn't think so, right? They're kind of cute looking. They kind of look... No, they're dangerous and scary as hell.
Their special
They
ability,
look so innocuous and innocent, but they're not. They're evil.
Feeding Frenzy, boosts Piranha Shoal DPS to one of the highest in the game, able to absolutely melt through the HP of even the
Terrifying.
tankiest targets. In contrast to the Salmon and Trout, because of their favorable matchup against larger players, Piranhas are the only fish build on this list that I think actually make great use of its positional advantage in rivers,
Horrifying.
as many mammals and birdmains will be forced to cross your territory over the course of their playthrough and fall victim to your frenzy attacks. Their main weakness is a lack of defensive capability, meaning that they can still be easily one-shot by other predator players.
I think getting killed by
The
these
next
would be
build
one
on
of
this
the
tier
worst
list
ways
does
to
not
die.
share this weakness.
Lionfish.
The Lionfish is one of the most well-defended fish builds in the game, relying on a huge arsenal of venomous spines to deal serious damage to attackers, similar to the Porcupine build on land.
Ironically, the cutaway during the Lionfish is a porcupine owning a lion.
Because of this, the Lionfish is an infamously unpleasant target to attack, and most predator players tend to either ignore or actively avoid them. While their other stats are quite low, this certainly hasn't stopped them from rising to dominance in their home server of the Indo-Pacific. Lionfish are also generalists who gobble up anything that their low mobility stat allows them to
That's
catch,
scary.
which can quickly
Our quills will blot out the sun.
deplete a server of its resources. And because of their quick respawn rate, Lionfish have rapidly
They
spread
look
to
pretty
other
cool,
ocean
too,
servers
not gonna
without
lie.
much pushback, at least until they reach the tropical Atlantic. See, there is one fish build that has been able to consistently take down Lionfish, and once I show you how broken some of their abilities are, it'll be easy to understand
What
why.
is it?
We've
Eel?
got 2 more builds to showcase in S tier, but real quick, I just want to point out that this is the longest video I've made so far, and took a huge amount of time and resources to produce. So if you're enjoying it and want more content like this, please do consider subscribing.
Absolutely,
Thanks.
TierZoo. You earned it. The eel?
The
No!
moray eel is one of the most
No!
uniquely powerful.
I told y'all, Barracuda scared the crap out of me. Eels. Ever since the Princess Bride scene with all of those eels screeching, the screeching eels, eels terrify me too. Why are all the most terrifying things at the top of the list?
Powerful fish in the game, with
Is
a
the
set of
Kraken at the
strange yet
top?
highly functional abilities and well-placed base stat allocations. So first, their stats. While the highest aquatic power rating falls to sharks
deep.
and whales, a close runner-up is the moray. Their teeth resemble broken glass and can do similarly brutal damage in
So
combat.
scary.
Their mobility is
Ursula.
surprisingly high for a fish that lacks pectoral and pelvic fins. But in addition to having great maneuverability in the tight spaces of a reef, they're capable of some pretty impressive bursts of speed too. Their stealth may seem low due to their vibrant coloring, but honestly, bright colors are everywhere in reef servers, so they don't stick out too much. In fact, their ability to contort and fit into crevices and other tight spaces gives them a pretty huge advantage for ambushing other players. Where things get interesting though is with their defense. The moray has a slime-based special ability, which serves multiple defensive purposes.
They're really cool looking
It protects them from
sometimes, so-
taking abrasion and puncture damage while passing through sharp coral and jagged spaces within the reef. But perhaps more surprisingly, it's great at deflecting damage from things like teeth and spikes. Not only does this give them a great matchup against sharks, but it also makes them one of the only builds in the game capable of taking down the lionfish. This excellent
so
matchup
cool.
spread makes placing the moray eel in S tier an easy decision.
Okay, this one's not horrifying,
The
thankfully.
final build on this tier list is the Billfish. This includes the marlin, swordfish, and sailfish, all of which have similar playstyles. This group is top tier for 2 reasons.
They're
First
so
is that they
fast.
have the highest swim speed in the game, beating out not just all other fish, but also mammals and birds. In addition to having unmatched speed,
Watching them hunt things seriously looks like a fighter pilot, doesn't it? It looks like a fighter pilot. If you've ever seen planes doing maneuvers with each other,
their large dorsal fins allow them to make tighter turns than most fish too, making them extremely good at chasing down prey.
that seal's
Their
just
most
hanging out
unique
waiting
trait,
for the
however, is their
remnants.
bill, one of the strangest offensive abilities in the game. Useful for both slashing and stabbing, this attack is one of the few in the game able to hit multiple targets at once. This makes it excellent for countering the ubiquitous safety numbers strategy many fish players adopt. And since the billfish hunt in packs, they can rack up insane kill counts, rivaling the hunting prowess of even a pot of dolphins. With busted stats and a signature move that's both flashy and downright broken, to me there's no question that the billfish is the most overpowered fish build in the game.
It would probably be really fun to play
Regardless of where your favorite fish build falls on the tier list, one thing's for sure. Adaptation is key to survivability in the current meta, and it's important to always be exploring new strategies to stay ahead of the curve. The same can be said for YouTubers,
That is
and this
so
is why
cool.
Nebula to buff this. So whatever you're in the mood for, this bundle.
I love TierZoo. That being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. The billfish, that's what I would pick. Absolutely. I mean, like, oh wow, you would pick the highest. Wesley, whoa, you would pick the most overpowered build in the entire meta? What a surprise. How brave of you. But tell me it didn't look like fun to just be flying through the air, 360 degrees, crazy mobility, doing backflips, honing in, and then just with your nose. Like, your nose just becomes an absolute killing machine that you swing aggressively. I mean, usually our noses are liabilities, right? Your nose would be your main weapon. You're just like killing things with your nose. That'd be so cool. That being said, make sure you guys subscribe down below for more reactions. Please comment and let me know other videos you want to see me react to, whether they are from TierZoo or just in general. I love you guys and hope you have a beautiful day. Take care of yourself. I'm Wesley and I'm